Chapter 6. At 5:47 a.m., Lily made what she was certain was the most sensible decision of her adult life. She was going to sneak out of the Heartbreak Hotel with Emma before Adrian woke up and saved her from making any more catastrophically bad choices. It was the right thing to do. The noble thing. Adrian had already sacrificed too much for them, and she wasn't going to let him throw away his entire empire because of some misguided alpha protective instincts, and whatever temporary madness had convinced him she was worth choosing over $50 billion. She'd packed quietly in the pre-dawn darkness, Emma sleeping peacefully in her arms. Adrian was crashed out in the ridiculous heart-shaped chair, his long legs sprawled at uncomfortable angles, his dark hair falling across his forehead in a way that made him look younger and less intimidating than usual. He'd turned off his phone for her. Walked away from a board meeting for her. Told his business partner to go to hell for her. Which was exactly why she had to leave. "Come on, baby girl," Lily whispered to Emma as she eased toward the door. "Let's go catch that flight to Portland." The plan was simple: take the elevator down, call a taxi, head to the airport, and disappear back into her normal life before Adrian could make any more grand romantic gestures that would inevitably destroy everything he'd worked for. It should have been foolproof. The first sign that the universe had other plans came when she pressed the elevator button and nothing happened. She pressed it again. Still nothing. A small placard next to the buttons informed her that the elevators were undergoing routine maintenance from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. "Stairs it is," Lily muttered, adjusting Emma in her arms and hefting the diaper bag. The stairwell was dimly lit and smelled like industrial cleaner mixed with something that might have been despair. Lily started down the steps, counting floors as she went. 10, 9, 8. At the 6th floor, she realized she'd been going up instead of down. "How is that even possible?" she asked Emma, who gurgled in response. "Gravity doesn't work backwards, does it?" She turned around and started what she was absolutely certain was downward this time. 5 minutes later, she found herself on the 14th floor, somehow having climbed even higher. "Okay," Lily said, fighting down panic. "Okay. This is fine. Hotels have signs. Directory maps. We'll figure this out." But the 14th floor was a maze of identical hallways that seemed to twist back on themselves like something out of a fever dream. Every door looked the same, every corridor led to another identical corridor, and there wasn't a single directional sign to be found. Emma was starting to fuss, picking up on Lily's growing anxiety. "It's okay, sweetheart," Lily murmured, bouncing her gently. "Mama's just temporarily geographically challenged." That's when she heard it, the ominous rumbling sound that every parent learns to fear. "Oh no," Lily breathed. "Not now. Please, not now." But Emma's digestive system had apparently decided that 6:15 a.m. in a lost hotel hallway was the perfect time for another spectacular diaper disaster. The smell hit the air like a biological weapon, and Emma's happy babbling suggested she was quite pleased with her timing. "Okay," Lily said, looking around the empty hallway with growing desperation. "We can handle this. We've handled worse." She spotted what looked like a utility closet and tried the handle. Locked. The next door was locked too. And the next. Emma's babbling was getting more insistent, and Lily could feel the dampness starting to seep through her daughter's outfit. Finally, miracle of miracles, she found an unlocked door. She pushed it open eagerly, then stopped short. She was on the roof. The Las Vegas dawn stretched out before her in shades of pink and gold, the Strip glittering in the distance like scattered diamonds. Under other circumstances, it might have been beautiful. Under these circumstances, with a baby who desperately needed changing and no way back inside, it was a disaster. BOMDA. Lily spun around to find a maintenance worker emerging from behind an air conditioning unit. He was a small, cheerful-looking man in coveralls, with kind eyes and a toolbox that looked like it had seen better decades. "Oh, thank God," Lily gasped. "Do you speak English? I need to get back inside, and my baby needs." "Desculpe, Neo Falo Ingalls," the man said with an apologetic shrug. "Português apenas." Lily stared at him. Portuguese. Of course. Because why would anything about today be easy? The maintenance worker, his name tag read Carlos, looked at Emma with concern, then at the obvious distress on Lily's face. He began speaking rapidly in Portuguese, gesturing toward Emma and the door they'd just come through. Yes, Lily said desperately. Door. Inside. Baby needs. She gestured frantically at Emma, who chose that moment to let out an outraged wail that echoed across the Vegas skyline. Carlos's eyes widened in understanding. Ah. Bibi. He pulled out his radio and began speaking rapid Portuguese into it. While Carlos called for backup, Lily tried the door handle. Locked. No, she muttered, pulling harder. The handle didn't budge. This cannot be happening. Emma's cries were escalating, and the smell was getting worse. Lily could feel panic clawing at her chest as the full scope of her situation became clear. She was locked on a hotel roof with a baby having a nuclear meltdown, unable to communicate with the only other person present, and Adrian was probably waking up to find them gone. This is fine, she said aloud, her voice cracking. This is totally fine. I'm just trapped on a roof in Vegas with a screaming baby and a maintenance worker who doesn't speak English. This happens to people all the time. Emma's wails reached a frequency that probably violated several city noise ordinances. Carlos was still talking rapidly into his radio, occasionally gesturing toward Lily and Emma with increasing urgency. Carlos, Lily said desperately. Carlos, right? I need to change her diaper. Diaper. Fralda. She'd Googled Portuguese baby words during Emma's teething phase, hoping it might somehow help with late-night crying. She'd never expected to use them on a Vegas hotel roof. Carlos's face lit up with understanding. Ah. Fralda. He began digging through his toolbox with the dedication of a man on a mission. What he produced was not a diaper. It was a shop rag. A clean shop rag, admittedly, but still very much a piece of cloth intended for mechanical purposes rather than infant hygiene. I can't put that on my baby, Lily said weakly. Carlos looked confused and hurt. He held up the rag proudly, clearly thinking he'd solved the problem. Emma's screaming had reached levels that were probably causing seismic readings in California. Okay, Lily said, desperation making her voice high and strained. Okay. It's clean. It's cloth adjacent. People use cloth diapers for centuries, right? This is just improvisational parenting. She spread out a receiving blanket on the roof and began the delicate process of changing Emma using shop rags and safety pins from her emergency diaper kit. Carlos hovered nearby, offering helpful commentary in Portuguese and occasionally handing her tools that were absolutely not meant for baby care. Halfway through the process, Lily's hand started shaking. I can't do this, she whispered, staring down at her daughter's red, angry face. I can't even change a diaper without everything going wrong. I can't navigate a hotel, I can't catch the right flight, I can't even leave without getting trapped on a roof. The tears started then, hot and bitter and unstoppable. I'm a terrible mother, she sobbed to Carlos, who looked increasingly alarmed. She deserves so much better than this. She deserves someone who doesn't get lost in hotels and ruin billionaires' lives and use shop rags as diapers. Carlos patted her shoulder awkwardly, murmuring what sounded like reassurances in Portuguese. I should have stayed in my apartment, Lily continued, the words pouring out of her like a dam had burst. I should have been content with our little life. But no, I had to want more. I had to take a job interview I couldn't afford to get to, on a plane I couldn't afford to be on, and look what happened. I destroyed everything. Emma's cries were quieting slightly now that she was being changed, but Lily's were getting louder. And Adrian, she gasped. God, what I've done to Adrian. He was fine before I crashed into his life. He had his empire and his meetings and his perfectly ordered world, and I ruined all of it. I made him think he wanted something he doesn't actually want, and now he's going to lose everything because of me. Lily? The voice came from behind her, quiet and concerned and achingly familiar. She turned to find Adrian standing in the doorway she'd been trying to get through, his hair disheveled and his eyes wide with something that looked like panic. "How did you?" she started. "Carlos called down to the front desk," Adrian said, moving toward her slowly like she was a spooked animal. "They called me when they couldn't find a translator." Carlos beamed and launched into rapid Portuguese, gesturing excitedly between Lily and Adrian. "He says you're having a crisis and the baby needed emergency diaper assistance," Adrian translated automatically. "He's very proud of the shop rag solution." Lily looked down at Emma, who was now wearing what was essentially a makeshift cloth diaper held together with safety pins and determination. Despite everything, her daughter looked perfectly content. "I was trying to leave," Lily said quietly. "I figured." Adrian sat down on the roof beside her, seemingly unbothered by the fact that he was wearing an expensive suit on a Vegas rooftop at dawn. "You're not very good at stealth missions." "I'm not good at anything," Lily said bitterly. "I can't even run away properly." "Is that what you were doing? Running away?" "I was trying to save your empire," Lily corrected. "I was trying to do the right thing for once." Adrian was quiet for a long moment, watching Carlos pack up his toolbox and chat happily to Emma in Portuguese. "You want to know something?" Adrian said finally. "I built my empire because I was terrified of needing anyone. Terrified of caring about something I could lose." Lily looked at him, surprised by the admission. "My parents died when I was 12, Adrian continued, his voice carefully controlled. "Car accident. One day I had a family, the next day I was alone in a boarding school with a trust fund and no idea how to be human anymore. Adrian. I told myself that money was safer than people. Corporations couldn't die in car accidents. Stock prices couldn't abandon you. So I built this empire, this wall of wealth and power, and I convinced myself I was happy." He picked up a small pebble from the roof and turned it over in his hands. "Then you crashed into my life with your chaos and your beautiful disasters, and suddenly I remembered what it felt like to be needed for something real. To care about someone more than I cared about protecting myself." Lily's tears had stopped, but her chest still felt tight with unshed emotion. "But that terrifies me," Adrian admitted. "Because caring about you and Emma means I could lose you. And I don't know if I'm strong enough to survive that. So why didn't you let me leave?" Adrian looked at her then, his gray eyes steady and sure. "Because being terrified of losing you is better than definitely not having you at all." Emma babbled happily from her spot on the blanket, reaching up toward the pink Vegas sky. "She's not even mine," Lily said quietly. "Emma. Her father, he left when I told him I was pregnant. Said he wasn't ready to be tied down. And here you are, ready to give up everything for a woman and a baby you've known for 3 days. Maybe that's because I know a good thing when I see it," Adrian said simply. "Maybe I'm tired of being careful and controlled and alone. Maybe you're having a midlife crisis." "Maybe," Adrian agreed. "But if I am, it's the best crisis I've ever had." Carlos had finished packing up and was heading toward the door, calling back cheerful Portuguese farewells. "Obrigado, Carlos." Lily called after him, one of the few Portuguese phrases she actually knew. Carlos beamed and gave them a thumbs up before disappearing inside. "You speak Portuguese now?" Adrian asked. "I googled baby words when Emma was teething. I thought it might help somehow." Lily shrugged. "It actually came in handy, which might be the first time anything I've done has worked out the way it was supposed to." "You mean besides getting on my plane, grounding it with baby food explosions, getting us trapped in the tackiest hotel in Vegas, and somehow making me realize I was living half a life?" Lily looked at him. "When you put it like that, it sounds almost intentional." Maybe it was. Adrian reached over and gently adjusted Emma's improvised diaper. "Maybe some chaos is exactly what I needed." The Las Vegas morning was getting brighter, the city waking up below them. In the distance, Lily could see airplanes taking off from McCarran, tiny silver dots carrying people toward their own uncertain futures. "Your business partner was right about one thing," Lily said finally. "This is going to cost you." Probably. You could lose everything. Possibly. And you're okay with that? Adrian looked at her, then at Emma, then at the ridiculous cityscape spread out before them. Ask me again in 50 years, he said. When I'm old and gray and Emma's bringing her own babies to visit us, and my empire is just a footnote in someone else's business history. Us? Lily's voice was barely a whisper. If you'll have me, Adrian said quietly. Both of you. Shop rag diapers and all. Emma chose that moment to make a happy sound, as if giving her approval to the entire conversation. And sitting on that Vegas rooftop in the early morning light, wearing yesterday's clothes and holding a baby in a makeshift diaper, Lily thought she might just be willing to take the biggest risk of her life. Chapter 7. Back in the burning love suite, Adrian stood in the bathroom staring at the small amber pill bottle in his hand. He'd been staring at it for 10 minutes now, his reflection fractured into a dozen pieces by the heart-shaped mirror surrounding him. The label read, Suppressex, Alpha Regulation Compound. Take 1 tablet daily. Do not discontinue without physician supervision. He'd been taking them for 22 years. Every morning, like clockwork, since he was 14 years old and had nearly killed his boarding school roommate during what the doctors had delicately called an episode of uncontrolled alpha aggression. The pills had saved his life, really. They'd turned him from a grief-stricken, rage-filled teenager into the controlled, calculating businessman who had built an empire. They'd given him the ice-cold demeanor that had earned him his nickname and his fortune. They were also the reason he hadn't been able to feel anything real in over 2 decades. Adrian? Lily's voice came through the bathroom door, soft with concern. Everything okay in there? He looked at his reflection again, all those fractured pieces of himself staring back, then at the pill bottle in his hand. Fine, he called back, but his voice sounded strange even to his own ears. The thing was, he hadn't taken his morning pill yesterday. Or the day before. In all the chaos with Emma's illness and his own growing obsession with keeping them safe, he'd forgotten the routine that had governed his life for more than 20 years. And things were happening to him. Things that should have terrified him. When Richard had insulted Lily and Emma, Adrian had felt something surge through his chest that was pure, undiluted fury. Not the cold anger he was used to managing, but something hot and primitive that had made him want to tear his business partner apart with his bare hands. When he'd found Lily crying on the roof this morning, that same primitive part of him had roared to life, demanding he fix whatever was hurting her, protect her from everything that threatened her peace. And when Emma had smiled at him yesterday, something had cracked open in his chest that felt suspiciously like the kind of bone-deep tenderness he hadn't experienced since he was 12 years old. These weren't the controlled, measured responses he was used to. These were raw, overwhelming, completely unmanageable feelings that seemed to be getting stronger by the hour. Adrian? Lily's voice was more insistent now. Seriously, are you all right? He looked at the pill bottle one more time, then made a decision that would have horrified his doctors, his lawyers, and probably anyone who'd ever done business with him. He opened the bottle and poured the remaining pills down the sink. I'm fine, he said, opening the bathroom door to find Lily waiting with Emma in her arms, both of them watching him with concern. But he wasn't fine. He was the opposite of fine. He was feeling everything, all at once, with an intensity that made his hands shake and his chest tight. Lily looked beautiful in the Vegas morning light streaming through the tacky heart-shaped windows. Emma was babbling happily, her shop rag diaper apparently working just fine. And all Adrian wanted to do was wrap them both in his arms and never let anything hurt them again. The intensity of the want was staggering. We should probably get some breakfast, Lily said, studying his face with those perceptive brown eyes. You look like you haven't eaten in days. I haven't been hungry, Adrian admitted, which was true. Food had been just fuel for the past few days, something to consume when his body demanded it. But now, looking at Lily's concerned expression, he was suddenly starving. Not just for food, but for the simple pleasure of sharing a meal with people who cared about him for reasons that had nothing to do with his net worth. Room service? Lily suggested. No. The word came out sharper than he'd intended, and he saw her flinch slightly. I mean, let's go somewhere. Somewhere real. Real? Not this. Adrian gestured vaguely at the Elvis-themed opulence surrounding them. Somewhere normal people eat breakfast. Lily looked around the suite, then back at him with amusement. I hate to break it to you, but normal people don't usually have the option of room service. Normal people eat cereal out of chipped bowls while standing at the kitchen counter. The image she painted was so foreign to Adrian's experience that it took him a moment to respond. When was the last time he'd eaten cereal? When was the last time he'd eaten anything that hadn't been prepared by a chef or served at a business meeting? Then let's find cereal, he said impulsively. And chipped bowls. And kitchen counters. Lily stared at him. Are you feeling all right? You're acting different. She was right, he was acting different. Without the pills, everything felt sharper, more vivid. Colors were brighter, sounds were clearer, and his emotional responses were happening at a volume he couldn't control. I'm fine, he lied, because he didn't know how to explain that he was currently experiencing 22 years' worth of suppressed feelings all at once. His phone rang, cutting through the moment like a knife. Adrian looked at the caller ID and felt that new, unfamiliar surge of protective anger. Richard. Again. Don't answer it, Lily said quietly. I have to. Do you? She shifted Emma to her hip and looked at him steadily. Do you really have to? Adrian stared at the ringing phone. In his old life, his medicated life, the answer would have been automatic. Of course he had to answer. Business was everything. Richard was his partner. The empire was his responsibility. But now, with his unfiltered alpha instincts roaring to life, all he could think about was the way Richard had looked at Lily yesterday. The contempt in his voice when he'd called Emma a bastard. The phone stopped ringing, then immediately started again. He's not going to give up, Adrian said. Then maybe it's time to have a different conversation with him, Lily suggested. One where you're not trying to manage his expectations or preserve your partnership. One where you tell him exactly what you think of his attitude. The idea was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Adrian had spent so many years being diplomatic, strategic, coldly calculating in his business relationships. The thought of just being honest was completely foreign. The phone rang again. This time, Adrian answered. What do you want, Richard? What do I want? Richard's voice was sharp with disbelief. I want to know if you've completely lost your mind. The Meridian Group just pulled out of negotiations. They said they can't do business with someone who's unreliable and emotionally compromised. Adrian felt the words hit him like physical blows, but underneath the impact was that new, burning anger. Emotionally compromised, he repeated slowly. That's what they said. Apparently word is getting out that you've been playing house with some random Omega instead of focusing on business. Your reputation is in free fall, Adrian. My reputation. Yes, your reputation. The thing that's taken us 20 years to build. The reason people trust Frost Enterprises with their billion-dollar deals. Lily was watching him with growing concern, probably picking up on the tension radiating from his body in waves. And what if I don't care about my reputation anymore? Adrian asked quietly. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. What did you just say? Richard's voice was dangerously quiet. I said, what if I don't care about my reputation? What if I'm tired of being the Ice King? What if I want to be someone who chooses people over profits? Then you're having a complete breakdown, Richard snapped. And I'm going to have you declared mentally incompetent before you destroy everything we've built. The threat should have scared Adrian. Should have made him back down, return to the careful diplomatic dance they'd been doing for decades. Instead, it made him furious. Try it, Adrian said, his voice going deadly quiet. Try to have me declared incompetent, Richard. See what happens when I decide to stop being nice about our business relationship. Adrian. I'm done, Adrian continued, the words pouring out of him like water through a broken dam. I'm done with your condescension. I'm done with your barely concealed contempt for anything that isn't profit. And I'm especially done with the way you talked about Lily and Emma yesterday. They're nobody. Richard exploded. Some Omega who got on your plane by mistake. They're everything, Adrian cut him off. They're everything you're not. They're real, and honest, and they care about people instead of portfolios. Lily's eyes went wide at his words, but she didn't interrupt. You know what your problem is, Richard? Adrian continued, his voice getting stronger. You think that being ruthless makes you powerful. But real power isn't about crushing people, it's about choosing to protect the ones who matter. This isn't you talking, Richard said desperately. This is some kind of breakdown. Some alpha territorial instinct that's making you. This is exactly me talking, Adrian interrupted. This is me without the medication I've been taking for 22 years to keep my alpha instincts suppressed. This is me actually feeling things for the first time since I was a kid. The admission hung in the air like a grenade. Lily's mouth fell open slightly. Medication? Suppressants, Adrian confirmed, still holding Richard's shell-shocked silence on the other end of the line. Alpha regulation compounds. I've been taking them since I was 14. Jesus Christ, Richard breathed. You're telling me you've been medically suppressing your alpha nature this entire time? This entire time, Adrian confirmed. And now I'm not. Now I'm feeling everything, and what I'm feeling is that I don't want to be your partner anymore. I don't want to build empires on other people's misery. I don't want to be the Ice King. Adrian, listen to me, Richard's voice had gone calculating, which Adrian recognized as his most dangerous mode. You're not thinking clearly. The suppressants were keeping you stable, focused. Without them, you're going to make decisions you'll regret. Like choosing the woman I'm falling in love with over a business partner who insults her. The words were out before Adrian could stop them, and they hit the room like a small explosion. Lily made a soft sound, her eyes going impossibly wide. Like that, Richard said grimly. Exactly like that. You don't love her, Adrian. You're experiencing uncontrolled alpha bonding impulses toward an omega in distress. It's biology, not emotion. Don't, Adrian said, his voice going dangerous again. Don't reduce what I feel to biology. It is biology. Richard shouted. You've spent your entire adult life being rational and controlled because you were taking medication that kept your primitive instincts in check. Now you're off those meds and your alpha brain is telling you to claim the first omega you see. That's not, Adrian started. Isn't it? You've known her for 3 days, Adrian. 3 days. And you're ready to throw away everything for her. The words hit home because they contained just enough truth to be devastating. Adrian had known Lily for 3 days. 3 chaotic, impossible, life-changing days. But when he looked at her now, standing in a ridiculous Elvis-themed hotel room, wearing yesterday's clothes, holding a baby in a shop-rag diaper, he couldn't imagine his life without her in it. Maybe it is biology, Adrian said finally. Maybe these are just uncontrolled alpha instincts. But maybe that doesn't matter. Adrian. I'm dissolving our partnership, Richard, Adrian said quietly. I'll buy out your shares, or you can buy out mine. But I'm done pretending to be someone I'm not. He ended the call and immediately turned off his phone, cutting off Richard's attempts to call back. The silence in the room was profound. Lily was staring at him with an expression he couldn't read, Emma babbling softly in her arms. Suppressants, she said finally. You've been taking medication to suppress your alpha nature since you were 14. Yes. That's why you're so controlled. So cold. Was so controlled, Adrian corrected. I haven't taken them in 3 days. Lily's eyes searched his face. What happened when you were 14? Adrian closed his eyes, the memory rushing back with painful clarity. Another boy at boarding school made a comment about my parents. About how they were probably better off dead than having a son like me. He could still remember the rage that had consumed him, hot and all-encompassing. I put him in the hospital, Adrian continued quietly. Broken ribs, fractured skull, internal bleeding. He was unconscious for 6 days. Lily's breath caught. That's when they put me on the suppressants. Said I had uncontrolled alpha aggression syndrome. Said without medication, I was dangerous. And you believed them? I was 14 and I'd nearly killed someone. Of course I believed them. Adrian opened his eyes to find Lily watching him with something that looked like understanding rather than fear. But you're not dangerous now, she said softly. You're the opposite of dangerous. You're the gentlest man I've ever met. That's the medication. No, Lily interrupted firmly. That's you. The real you. I've seen you angry, Adrian. I've seen you protective and possessive and ready to fight for what matters to you. But I've never seen you violent. It's only been 3 days. 3 days where you've been off your medication and dealing with more chaos than most people see in a year, Lily pointed out. If you were really dangerous, don't you think it would have shown by now? Adrian looked at her, then at Emma, who was reaching toward him with grabby baby hands. Maybe they were wrong, Lily continued gently. Maybe you were just a grieving 14-year-old who reacted badly to cruelty. Maybe the person you've been for the past 22 years isn't the real you at all. Without thinking, Adrian reached out and took Emma from her arms. The baby settled against his chest with a contented sigh, her small hand fisting in his shirt. The gesture was so natural, so right, that it took his breath away. I don't know who I am without the pills, he admitted quietly. Then maybe it's time to find out, Lily said, moving closer to them both. Maybe it's time to stop being afraid of who you might be and start discovering who you actually are. Adrian looked down at Emma, who was gazing up at him with those serious blue eyes, then at Lily, who was looking at both of them with an expression of such tender hope that it made his chest ache. What if Richard was right? He asked quietly. What if this is just biology? What if what I think I feel for you isn't real? Lily considered this for a long moment. Then we'll figure it out as we go. But Adrian? Even if it started as biology, that doesn't mean it can't become something real. Something chosen. Emma babbled softly, as if agreeing with her mother's assessment. Besides, Lily added with a slight smile, I'm pretty sure biology doesn't explain why you're so good with babies, or why you stayed up all night taking care of Emma, or why you turned off your phone to have breakfast with us. Adrian felt his own mouth curve upward. No, I suppose it doesn't. So, Lily said, reaching up to brush a strand of hair from his forehead. What do you say we go find some cereal and chipped bowls? Start figuring out who you are when you're not trying to be the Ice King? Adrian looked around the ridiculous Elvis suite one more time, then at the woman and baby who had somehow managed to crack open his carefully controlled world and let the light in. I say that sounds like the best business decision I've ever made, he said. And for the first time in 22 years, Adrian Frost felt completely, terrifyingly, wonderfully alive. Chapter 8. 6 months later, Adrian was standing in the middle of Lily's tiny Portland apartment, holding a diaper that looked like modern art, if modern art were designed by someone having a particularly creative breakdown. I don't think it's supposed to twist like that, Lily observed from the kitchen, where she was somehow managing to feed Emma pureed sweet potatoes while packing her nursing bag for her shift at Portland General. It's not twisted, Adrian protested, though he was looking at the diaper with the expression of a man who had conquered international markets but been defeated by adhesive tabs. It's architecturally innovative. Emma, sitting in her high chair, babbled what sounded distinctly like laughter and clapped her hands, sending sweet potato flying across the kitchen. Right, Lily said, abandoning her packing to rescue both Adrian and their daughter from the diaper situation. Let me. No, Adrian said firmly, though his voice was gentle. I can do this. I've restructured Fortune 500 companies. I can handle one diaper. He'd been saying some variation of this for 6 months now, ever since they'd returned from Vegas and he'd made the decision that had shocked everyone who knew him. Instead of choosing between his empire and his family, he was going to rebuild his empire around his family. Frost Enterprises still existed, but it looked nothing like the cold, ruthless corporation it had been under Richard's influence. Adrian had implemented flexible work schedules, expanded parental leave policies, and moved his headquarters from New York to Portland specifically so he could be home for dinner every night. The business media had called it everything from revolutionary to corporate suicide. Adrian's competitors had waited for him to fail spectacularly. Instead, Frost Enterprises had become one of the most sought-after employers in the country, and their employee satisfaction ratings were through the roof. Turns out, when people felt valued as human beings rather than profit generators, they did remarkable work. There, Adrian announced triumphantly, straightening up from the changing table. Perfect diaper application. Lily looked at Emma, who was now wearing what could generously be described as a diaper if one squinted and used considerable imagination. It's on sideways, Lily said gently. It's unconventional, Adrian corrected. Dada, Emma said clearly, reaching up toward Adrian with grabby hands. Both adults froze. Did she just, Adrian started. Her first word, Lily breathed. Her first word was, Dada. Adrian looked stunned, like he'd been hit by lightning. But I'm not. I mean, she has a biological father. Who walked away the minute I told him I was pregnant, Lily said firmly. You're the one who's been here every night for 6 months. You're the one who gets up with her when she has nightmares. You're the one who learned to make formula and change diapers, badly, and read her the same bedtime story 15 times in a row. Dada, Emma repeated, more insistently this time, making grabby hands at Adrian. I think she's made her choice, Lily said softly. Adrian picked up Emma carefully, his large hands gentle as he settled her against his chest. She immediately grabbed a fistful of his shirt and babbled contentedly. Dada, she said again, patting his chest with her small palm. Hello, Emma, Adrian said quietly, his voice rough with emotion. Hello, beautiful girl. Lily watched them together and felt the familiar flutter in her chest that had never quite gone away. 6 months of living with Adrian Frost had taught her many things, but the most important was this: he was nothing like the man she'd thought he was when she'd first stumbled onto his plane. The Ice King had been a carefully constructed facade, designed to protect a man who felt too much rather than too little. The real Adrian was warm and funny and surprisingly domestic. He burned breakfast with impressive consistency, but he never stopped trying. He was terrible at diaper changes, but he approached each one with the dedication of a man tackling a hostile takeover. And he loved Emma with the fierce, protective devotion of a man who had chosen to be her father in every way that mattered. I have to get to work, Lily said reluctantly, grabbing her bag and kissing Emma's forehead. Mrs. Henderson will be here in 20 minutes. Actually, Adrian said, not looking up from making silly faces at Emma, I moved my meetings to this afternoon. I thought I'd stay home with Emma this morning. Lily paused in the doorway. You moved billion-dollar negotiations so you could babysit? I'm not babysitting, Adrian corrected with mock offense. I'm parenting. There's a difference. And yes, I moved them. The Yamamoto group can wait until after lunch. 6 months ago, Lily would have been horrified by the casual way he talked about rearranging international business deals. Now, she just shook her head and smiled. Don't let her con you into having cookies for breakfast again, she warned. That was one time, Adrian protested. And they were organic cookies. They were Oreos. Organic Oreos, Adrian said with dignity. I checked the label very carefully. Emma clapped her hands and said Dada again, as if agreeing with his assessment. I'm outnumbered in my own home, Lily muttered, but she was smiling as she said it. At Portland General, Lily had found her professional footing in ways she'd never expected. Her supervisor, Dr. Patricia Williams, had quickly recognized that Lily's emotional intelligence, what she'd always thought of as her omega weakness, was actually her greatest strength as a nurse. Martinez, Dr. Williams called as Lily arrived on the pediatric ward. I need you in room 312. We've got a scared 7-year-old who won't let anyone near him, and his parents are at their wits' end. This was where Lily shone. Where other medical professionals saw a difficult patient, she saw a frightened child who needed someone to understand his fear rather than dismiss it. 20 minutes later, she emerged from room 312 with young Tyler Morrison's hand in hers, chattering about his favorite superhero while they walked to radiology for his x-ray. How do you do that? asked Rebecca Chen, another nurse who'd been watching the interaction with amazement. Do what? Get them to trust you so quickly. That kid has been here for 2 days, and he's barely spoken to anyone. Lily shrugged, settling Tyler into the radiology waiting area with a coloring book. I just listened to what they're really saying. Kids aren't difficult, they're scared. Once you address the fear, everything else becomes manageable. It was a lesson she was still learning to apply to herself. For years, she'd thought her tendency to cry easily, to feel everything deeply, to be overwhelmed by chaos made her weak. But 6 months of watching Adrian struggle to express his emotions had taught her that her ability to feel and process and adapt wasn't weakness, it was a superpower. She was the one who noticed when Emma was getting sick before any symptoms appeared. She was the one who could tell when Adrian was having a bad day just by the way he held his shoulders. She was the one who somehow managed to keep their unconventional little family running smoothly even when everything around them was falling apart. Her phone buzzed with a text from Adrian. Emma and I are at the park. She's teaching me the finer points of slide negotiation. Please advise, is it normal for toddlers to have such strong opinions about playground equipment? Lily smiled and typed back, completely normal. She gets her stubborn streak from you. His response was immediate, I prefer, determined. More professional. Whatever helps you sleep at night, Frost. Your snoring helps me sleep at night. I do not snore. You snore like a freight train. It's very cute. Lily was still smiling when her phone rang. The caller ID made her heart skip. Portland General, this is Lily. Miss Martinez? This is Janet Morrison. Tyler's mom. I wanted to thank you for what you did today. He's been talking non-stop about the nice nurse who understood about superheroes. He's a brave kid, Lily said sincerely. You should be proud. I wanted to ask, do you ever do private nursing? Tyler's going to need some follow-up care at home, and he specifically asked if you could be the one to help him. Lily felt a familiar flutter of pride. 6 months ago, she would have dismissed the request, convinced she wasn't qualified enough or experienced enough. Now, she heard it for what it was, recognition of her unique gifts. I don't do private nursing, she said, but let me talk to Dr. Williams about setting up some follow-up visits here at the hospital. Would that work? After she hung up, Lily found herself thinking about the conversation she'd had with Adrian the night before. I'd been thinking, he'd said, watching her fold Emma's tiny clothes with the efficiency of someone who'd learned to find order in chaos, about what you said the day we met. I said a lot of things that day. Most of them while crying or apologizing. You said you were going to Portland for a job interview. That you wanted something more. Lily had looked up from the pile of impossibly small socks. I remember. What if I told you I had an idea about that? About the something more part? Now, standing in the hospital corridor, Lily pulled out her phone and dialed Adrian's number. Frost residence, Emma speaking, Adrian answered in a ridiculously high voice. She's 8 months old, Lily said, laughing despite herself. She can't answer the phone. She's very advanced for her age, Adrian replied in his normal voice. Just like her mother. Speaking of which, tell me about this idea you mentioned last night. There was a pause, and Lily could hear Emma babbling in the background. I'll tell you when you get home, Adrian said. But I think you're going to like it. That evening, Lily came home to find Adrian in the kitchen attempting what appeared to be homemade baby food. Emma was in her high chair, covered head to toe in what might once have been pureed carrots, looking absolutely delighted with the chaos. Don't ask, Adrian said without looking up from the blender, which was making ominous grinding noises. I wasn't going to, Lily lied, kissing Emma's sticky forehead. But maybe next time we start with the blender actually plugged in? Adrian looked down at the unplugged appliance with the expression of a man who had just discovered a fundamental flaw in his business strategy. That would explain the lack of progress, he admitted. While Adrian wrestled with baby food production, Lily cleaned Emma up and got her ready for bed. It was their evening routine, comfortable and familiar in ways that still surprised her sometimes. 6 months ago, She'd been a single mother struggling to make ends meet, convinced she was failing at everything. Now, she was part of something she'd never dared to dream of, a real family. After Emma was asleep, Adrian finally revealed his mysterious idea. "I want to start a foundation," he said, settling onto the couch beside her with 2 cups of tea. "A non-profit focused on supporting single parents, medical care, childcare, job training, housing assistance." Lily looked at him over her tea. "That's a beautiful idea, but what does it have to do with me?" "I want you to run it." The teacup slipped slightly in her hands. "What?" "You understand what people need because you've been there," Adrian said, his gray eyes serious. "You have the emotional intelligence to connect with parents who are struggling. And you have the organizational skills to turn chaos into something manageable." "Adrian, I'm a nurse. I don't know anything about running a foundation. I'm a businessman who 6 months ago had never changed a diaper," Adrian pointed out. "We'll learn together. Besides, you wouldn't be starting from scratch. I've already talked to some people, and the preliminary funding is in place." Lily stared at him. "How much funding?" $50 million to start. More if the program works. $50 million. Lily set down her tea carefully. "You want to give me $50 million to run a foundation?" "I want to give us $50 million to help families like yours," Adrian corrected. "Families who deserve support and recognition instead of judgment." Before Lily could respond, Emma's cry echoed from the nursery. Adrian was on his feet immediately, but Lily caught his arm. "I'll get her," she said. "You've been with her all day." "So have you. You just got off a 12-hour shift. And you just spent the day being a dad while trying to run a multinational corporation," Lily countered. "We'll both go." They found Emma standing in her crib, tears streaming down her face, reaching for them with desperate arms. "Bad dream?" Lily murmured, scooping up her daughter while Adrian rubbed Emma's back soothingly. "Mama," Emma sobbed, then looked over at Adrian. "Dada." "We're both here, sweetheart," Adrian said softly. "You're safe." They sat in the rocking chair together, all 3 of them somehow fitting in the space meant for one, until Emma's sobs subsided into hiccuping sighs. "She's getting too big for this chair," Lily observed. "We'll get a bigger chair," Adrian said immediately. "A rocking sofa. Whatever she needs." Lily looked at him, at this man who had restructured his entire life around their unconventional little family, and felt her heart do that familiar flutter. "About the foundation," she said quietly. "You don't have to decide tonight." "Yes," she interrupted. "Yes, I want to do it. I want to help other families the way you helped us." Adrian's smile was soft and proud and full of love. "We helped each other." "Dada," Emma mumbled sleepily, patting Adrian's chest. "Mama." "That's right, beautiful girl," Adrian whispered. "Mama and Dada. We're not going anywhere." 1 year later. The wedding was supposed to be small and simple. Just family and close friends at the little church where Lily had been baptized, followed by dinner at her favorite restaurant. Of course, with Emma involved, nothing stayed simple for long. "Did anyone think to bring extra diapers?" Adrian asked in a stage whisper as they stood at the altar, Emma balanced on his hip in a tiny flower girl dress that she'd already managed to smear with something that looked suspiciously like cake frosting. "It's in the diaper bag," Lily whispered back, trying not to laugh. "In the front pew." "The diaper bag that's currently in Jessica's car because she forgot it when she went to get more flowers?" Lily's eyes went wide with horror. "Please tell me you're joking." "I never joke about diaper emergencies," Adrian said solemnly. "I've learned better." Reverend Thomas, who had known Lily since she was Emma's age, cleared his throat gently. "Perhaps we could expedite the ceremony? Skip ahead to the important parts?" "All the parts are important," Adrian protested, but Emma chose that moment to make a face that every parent in the congregation recognized with dread. "Oh no," Lily breathed. "Oh yes," Adrian confirmed grimly. The smell hit the church like a small biological weapon. Emma looked absolutely delighted with her timing. "Ladies and gentlemen," Reverend Thomas announced with admirable composure, "we're going to take a brief recess while the wedding party handles a pressing situation." The congregation burst into laughter as Adrian jogged down the aisle with Emma, Lily right behind him, her wedding dress hiked up so she could run in her heels. "This is not how I pictured my wedding day," Lily called over Emma's increasingly outraged wails. "Really?" Adrian called back, pushing through the church doors toward their car where they kept emergency supplies. "Because this is exactly how I pictured mine." 10 minutes later, they were back at the altar, Adrian's shirt slightly stained, Lily's hair slightly disheveled, and Emma clean and content in a backup outfit. "Now then," Reverend Thomas said with a smile, "shall we try this again?" The ceremony proceeded without further incident until the moment when Adrian was supposed to kiss the bride. Just as he leaned in, Emma, who had been passed to Adrian's mother in the front row, let out a loud, "Dada," and began clapping enthusiastically. "She approves," Adrian murmured against Lily's lips. "Good thing," Lily murmured back. "She's kind of part of the package deal." "Best package deal I ever made," Adrian said, and kissed his wife properly while their daughter cheered and the congregation laughed and someone in the back row started crying happy tears. Later, at the reception, as Adrian attempted to feed Emma cake while simultaneously giving a toast, Lily looked around at their gathered friends and family, people who had embraced their unconventional story with open arms, and realized something profound. She had spent her whole life thinking she was too much. Too emotional, too chaotic, too needy. But Adrian had taught her that too much was just another way of saying exactly right for the people who matter. "What are you thinking about?" Adrian asked, settling beside her with Emma on his lap, both of them covered in cake crumbs. "Just this," Lily said, gesturing to the controlled chaos around them. "Our beautiful disaster of a life." "Our beautiful disaster of a family," Adrian corrected, pressing a kiss to her temple. Emma clapped her hands and babbled something that sounded remarkably like "Mama Dada family," though it was hard to tell through the cake in her mouth. "Exactly right, sweetheart," Lily said, smoothing Emma's hair. "Exactly right." And in the middle of all that beautiful chaos, the laughter and the crying and the cake-covered toddler and the man who had learned that love was worth more than any empire, Lily finally understood what home really meant. It wasn't a place. It was people who chose each other, again and again, through diaper emergencies and business crises and all the magnificent disasters that made life worth living. It was exactly where she belonged. Epilogue, 18 months later. The law offices of Henderson, Martinez and Associates occupied the entire 15th floor of downtown Portland's newest building, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a stunning view of the city and Mount Hood beyond. But Lily barely noticed the scenery as she sat across from Thomas Henderson, Emma's biological father's lawyer, trying to keep her hands from shaking. "My client is prepared to offer a very generous settlement," Henderson was saying, his smile as cold as his eyes. $5 million, and he'll disappear from Emma's life forever. No custody claims, no visitation rights, nothing. Beside her, Adrian's jaw was set in the hard lines she'd learned to recognize as barely controlled fury. His own lawyer, Maria Santos, was taking careful notes while keeping her expression professionally neutral. "And if we refuse?" Lily asked quietly. Henderson's smile turned predatory. "Then James Morrison will file for full custody of his daughter. He's prepared to argue that a single mother living with a man who's not her husband creates an unstable environment for a child." "We are married," Adrian said, his voice deadly calm. "As of 6 months ago." A hasty marriage that coincidentally occurred just weeks after Mr. Morrison expressed interest in his parental rights, Henderson countered. "My client believes this was a calculated move to present a more stable home environment to family court." Lily felt the familiar flutter of panic in her chest. James Morrison, the man who had walked away the moment she'd told him she was pregnant, who had refused to even acknowledge Emma's existence for the first year of her life, had suddenly reappeared 3 months ago with lawyers and demands and a new wife who apparently wanted to start fresh with a family. "He has no grounds for custody," Maria said calmly. "He voluntarily abandoned his parental rights through his actions." No financial support, no contact, no interest in Emma's welfare until now. Abandoned rights can be restored by the court when it's in the child's best interest, Henderson replied smoothly. And my client can provide Emma with advantages that a nurse's salary and an unstable business situation cannot. Adrian's hands clenched into fists on the conference table. Unstable business situation? Frost Enterprises' recent restructuring has been well documented in the financial press, Henderson said with false sympathy. Revenue down 30%, key partnerships dissolved, leadership questioned by industry analysts. Hardly the stable environment a child deserves. It was true that Adrian's decision to prioritize work-life balance had cost the company some of its more cutthroat contracts. But what Henderson wasn't mentioning was that employee retention was at an all-time high, their customer satisfaction scores were through the roof, and the company was more profitable than ever, just in a different way. We need time to consider your offer, Maria said professionally. Of course, Henderson agreed. But I should mention that Mr. Morrison is prepared to file custody papers tomorrow if we don't hear from you by 5 p.m. today. After Henderson left, Lily sat in silence for several minutes, staring out at Mount Hood and trying not to cry. He can't take her, she said finally. Adrian, he can't take her. He won't, Adrian said firmly, but she could hear the uncertainty underneath his confidence. He has money. A stable marriage. A house in the suburbs with a white picket fence and probably a golden retriever. Lily's voice was getting higher, more strained. What do we have? A converted warehouse loft and a business that's supposedly failing in. We have love, Adrian interrupted. We have Emma calling me Dada every morning. We have 2 years of middle-of-the-night feedings and doctor's appointments and first steps and first words. We have actually being her parents. Will that be enough? Lily whispered. Before Adrian could answer, Maria cleared her throat. Actually, I think it will be. But we need to address the elephant in the room. Which is? Adrian asked. James Morrison isn't really interested in Emma, Maria said bluntly. He's interested in Adrian's money. This custody thread is a shakedown, plain and simple. Lily stared at her. What do you mean? I mean that men who voluntarily abandon their children don't suddenly develop paternal instincts 18 months later without a financial motive, Maria explained. I'm willing to bet that if we investigate Mr. Morrison's recent financial situation, we'll find some interesting information. 3 hours later, they had their answer. Gambling debts, Maria announced, sliding a folder across the table to them. James Morrison owes approximately $2 million to various casinos and loan sharks. His new wife comes from money, but her family has cut them off after his recent indiscretions came to light. So he's using Emma as leverage, Lily said, feeling sick. Exactly. He's betting that Adrian will pay him to go away rather than risk a custody battle. Adrian was quiet for a long moment, studying the financial documents with the focused intensity that meant his business brain was working. What if we call his bluff? He said finally. What do you mean? Lily asked. What if we let him file for custody? What if we make him prove in court that he's a fit father? Maria looked intrigued. It's risky. Family court judges can be unpredictable. But we have documentation, Adrian continued, his voice gaining strength. Every doctor's appointment, every milestone, every night we've taken care of Emma when she was sick. We have proof that we've been her parents in every way that matters. Adrian, Lily said quietly, what if we lose? He turned to look at her, his gray eyes steady and sure. Then we'll appeal. And if we lose the appeal, we'll keep fighting. Because Emma is our daughter, Lily. Not his. Ours. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later, and those were the longest 2 weeks of Lily's life. Adrian threw himself into preparation with the same intensity he'd once reserved for hostile takeovers. He organized their documentation, researched family law precedents, and even hired a private investigator to gather more information about James Morrison's character and lifestyle. What they found was damning. Morrison had been arrested twice for drunk driving in the past year, had defaulted on 3 different loans, and according to his ex-girlfriend, who was more than happy to talk, had a violent temper when he'd been drinking. The night before the hearing, Lily found Adrian in Emma's nursery, sitting in the rocking chair with their sleeping daughter in his arms. "She's getting too big for this chair," he said quietly, echoing the conversation they'd had so many months ago. "We'll get a bigger chair," Lily replied, just as she had before. "What if," Adrian started, then stopped. "What if what? What if the judge doesn't see what we see? What if they look at us and just see a failed business deal and a single mother who got lucky?" Lily sat down on the floor beside the rocking chair, resting her head against Adrian's knee. "Then they're not looking hard enough," she said firmly. "Because what we have isn't luck, Adrian. It's choice. We choose each other every day. We choose Emma every day. We choose this family every day." Emma stirred in Adrian's arms, making soft sleep sounds. "Mama," she mumbled, though her eyes stayed closed. "Dada." Even in her sleep, Adrian marveled softly. Even in her sleep, Lily agreed. The next morning, they walked into the courthouse as a family. Emma was wearing her best dress, a little blue number with tiny flowers that Adrian's mother had bought for her, and she was in one of her rare cooperative moods, charming everyone she met with babbled greetings and enthusiastic waving. James Morrison looked exactly like Lily remembered, handsome in a shallow way, with the kind of smile that had once made her think he was charming but now just looked calculating. His wife, Victoria, was perfectly put together in the way that spoke of expensive stylists and unlimited shopping budgets. The hearing began with Morrison's lawyer painting a picture of their client as a reformed man who had made mistakes but was now ready to be the father Emma deserved. "My client recognizes that he was young and foolish when he learned of Emma's existence," Henderson said smoothly. "But he's matured now. He has a stable marriage, a successful real estate business, and a genuine desire to provide his daughter with the security and advantages she deserves." When it was Maria's turn, she methodically dismantled Morrison's claims piece by piece. She presented evidence of his gambling debts, his arrests, his complete absence from Emma's life. She called Dr. Chen to testify about Emma's medical history and who had been present for every appointment. She called Mrs. Henderson, their elderly neighbor who had watched Emma countless times, to testify about the loving, stable home environment Lily and Adrian had created. But the moment that changed everything came when Morrison himself took the stand. "I love Emma," he said, looking directly at the judge. "She's my daughter, and I want to be part of her life." "Can you tell me Emma's middle name?" Maria asked during cross-examination. Morrison looked confused. What? Her middle name. Surely if you love your daughter, you know her full name?" Emma." Morrison looked helplessly at his lawyer. "Emma Rose Martinez Frost," Maria said clearly. "Emma Rose. Named after Lily's grandmother, who raised her after her own parents died. But you wouldn't know that, would you, Mr. Morrison? Because you've never actually asked about Emma's life." "I know she's my daughter," Morrison said defensively. "Do you know she's allergic to strawberries?" Maria continued relentlessly. "Do you know she has a birthmark on her left shoulder that looks like a butterfly? Do you know she's afraid of loud noises but loves thunderstorms? Do you know her favorite book is Goodnight Moon, and she insists on reading it 3 times before bed?" Morrison was silent. "Do you know that her first word was Dada, and she was looking at Adrian Frost when she said it?" He's not her real father," Morrison stammered. "Isn't he?" Maria asked quietly. "Then who is? The man who walked away before she was born, or the man who's gotten up every night for 18 months when she had nightmares? The man who hasn't seen her in 2 years, or the man who learned to change diapers, badly, because he wanted to take care of her? The man who's demanding money to stay away from her, or the man who's restructured his entire life around being her father?" The courtroom was silent. When the judge retired to consider her decision, Lily felt like she might throw up. Emma had fallen asleep in Adrian's arms, exhausted by the long day and unfamiliar surroundings. "Whatever happens," Adrian said quietly, "we'll handle it together." Lily nodded, not trusting her voice. 30 minutes later, Judge Catherine Walsh returned with her decision. This is a case that highlights the difference between biological parentage and actual parenting, she began. While Mr. Morrison is Emma's biological father, the evidence clearly shows that Mr. Frost has functioned as her father in every meaningful way. Lily held her breath. Furthermore, Mr. Morrison's sudden interest in custody, coinciding with his significant financial difficulties, raises serious questions about his motivations. His complete lack of knowledge about his daughter's life, health, and needs demonstrates that his interest is not in Emma's welfare. James Morrison's face was getting redder by the minute. Therefore, I am denying Mr. Morrison's petition for custody. I am also granting Mr. Frost's petition for legal adoption of Emma Martinez. From this day forward, Emma Rose Martinez Frost is legally and permanently the daughter of Adrian Frost and Lily Martinez Frost. The gavel came down with finality, and Lily burst into tears. Emma woke up at the sound of her mother crying and immediately started fussing, reaching for Lily with concerned baby hands. Happy tears, sweetheart, Lily sobbed, taking Emma from Adrian's arms. These are very, very happy tears. Mama sad? Emma asked, patting Lily's wet cheeks with her small palms. Mama's perfect, Adrian said, wrapping both of them in his arms. Mama's absolutely perfect. Later that evening, after the celebration dinner and the phone calls to friends and family and the general chaos that accompanied any major life event with a toddler, they finally made it home to their converted warehouse loft. I can't believe it's over, Lily said, settling onto their couch with Emma while Adrian opened a bottle of champagne. It was never really a contest, Adrian said, pouring 2 glasses. He never stood a chance. Because of the money we spent on lawyers? Because he's not her father, Adrian said simply. I am. As if summoned by their conversation, Emma looked up from the picture book she was destroying and grinned at Adrian. Dada, she said clearly, holding up her arms. Adrian set down the champagne and scooped her up, spinning her around until she giggled with delight. That's right, beautiful girl, he said softly. Dada's here. Dada's always going to be here. Always, Lily agreed, and meant it with every fiber of her being. 6 months later, they were back in court again, but this time for a much happier occasion. The official adoption ceremony was brief and bureaucratic, but when Judge Walsh handed them the final paperwork declaring Emma Rose Martinez Frost to be legally and permanently their daughter, it felt like the most important business transaction of Adrian's life. Congratulations, the judge said with a smile. You're now officially a family. We were always a family, Adrian said, adjusting Emma on his hip. Now we just have the paperwork to prove it. That afternoon, they celebrated at Powell's Books, Emma's favorite place in Portland, where she proceeded to crawl through the children's section like she owned the place, babbling at other kids and trying to eat the spine of a bored book about puppies. She's going to be trouble when she's older, observed Margaret Powell, the bookstore's elderly owner, watching Emma with fond amusement. She's trouble now, Lily said, rescuing a copy of Pat the Bunny from Emma's determined destruction. We're just hoping to channel it constructively. Like her father, Margaret said with a knowing look at Adrian, who was trying to interest Emma in a book about trucks instead of the book about puppies she was determined to consume. I prefer to think of it as focused determination, Adrian said with dignity, then immediately abandoned all pretense of sophistication when Emma clapped her hands and laughed at his expression. As they walked home through the Portland streets, Emma chattering away in her stroller and pointing out everything from dogs to delivery trucks with equal enthusiasm, Lily reflected on how far they'd all come. The Lily Martinez who had accidentally boarded Adrian's plane 18 months ago would never have believed this life was possible. She'd been so convinced of her own inadequacy, so certain that she was too much chaos for anyone to handle long-term. But Adrian had taught her that her chaos wasn't a bug, it was a feature. Her emotional intelligence, her ability to adapt and nurture and find solutions in impossible situations, hadn't made her weak. It had made her exactly the right partner for a man who had spent his adult life learning to feel again. And the foundation they'd started, officially called the Emma Foundation, though Emma herself had no idea she was the inspiration for a $50 million nonprofit, was already changing lives. They'd helped 43 single parents find stable housing, secure childcare, and access healthcare in their first year of operation. The waiting list for services was 6 months long, and Lily was already working on expanding their programs to other cities. "You know what I was thinking about today?" Adrian said as they climbed the stairs to their loft. "How much you love family court," Lily suggested. "How much I love my life," Adrian corrected, fishing for his keys while juggling Emma, who was now demanding to be carried instead of riding in her stroller. "Specifically, how much I love this chaos we've built together." Emma chose that moment to grab Adrian's hair and yank with impressive toddler strength, making him yelp. Emma rose, Lily scolded gently, extracting Adrian's hair from their daughter's grip. "We don't pull Dada's hair." "Hair," Emma announced proudly, as if she'd just discovered the concept. "Yes, hair," Adrian agreed, rubbing his scalp ruefully. "Dada's hair that's getting grayer by the day thanks to you, little troublemaker." "Dada hair," Emma said solemnly, then immediately lunged for it again. As they finally made it inside their home, the loft that had started as Adrian's sterile bachelor pad and had somehow transformed into a warm, lived-in family space full of toys and finger paintings and the comfortable clutter of people who actually lived there, Lily looked around and felt that familiar flutter of contentment. The kitchen counter was covered with Emma's artwork from daycare. The living room had given up any pretense of sophistication in favor of baby-proofed everything, and a play area that looked like Toys R Us had exploded. Adrian's home office had been relocated to accommodate a nursery that Emma had already outgrown but refused to leave. It was chaos. It was imperfect. It was absolutely nothing like the life she'd planned for herself 2 years ago. It was perfect. "I love you," she said impulsively, watching Adrian attempt to negotiate with Emma about putting down his hair and picking up her favorite stuffed elephant instead. "Even when I'm losing a battle of wills with an 18-month-old, he asked, finally succeeding in the great hair liberation. "Especially then," Lily confirmed. "You're a very good father, Adrian Frost." "I had a good teacher," he said, settling Emma into her high chair for dinner. "She taught me that loving someone means showing up, every day, even when it's hard." "Especially when it's hard," Lily corrected, echoing the conversation they'd had so many months ago on a Vegas rooftop when everything had seemed impossible. Emma banged her sippy cup on her high chair tray and announced, "Hungry." "Dinner it is," Adrian said, rolling up his sleeves. "What do we think about spaghetti tonight?" "I think you're brave," Lily said, remembering the last time they'd given Emma pasta. "I also think we should put plastic sheeting down first." "Live dangerously," Adrian said with a grin. "What's the worst that could happen?" Famous last words, Lily thought as she watched Emma systematically cover herself, her high chair, and a substantial portion of the kitchen in marinara sauce 20 minutes later. But as she helped Adrian clean up the chaos, Emma babbling happily in her sauce-covered state, completely unrepentant about the destruction she'd wreaked, Lily couldn't stop smiling. This was their life. Their beautiful, chaotic, impossible life. And she wouldn't change a single messy moment of it. "Same time tomorrow?" Adrian asked, wiping sauce off the ceiling with the resignation of a man who'd learned that some battles were worth surrendering. "Wouldn't miss it," Lily confirmed, kissing Emma's spaghetti-covered forehead. "Right, Emma? Ready for more chaos tomorrow?" "More," Emma announced delightedly, clapping her sauce-covered hands. And in that moment, surrounded by the beautiful disaster they'd built together, Lily knew that more was exactly what they'd get, and exactly what they wanted. After all, they were the Frost family. Chaos was what they did best. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe and like this video to continue listening to this type of story daily, and also, to appreciate this community too. I would like to know the country in which you are in, listening to this story. Which country is that? Please comment below.